I knew that it was hard for her to adjust. And I knew that it wasn't the most fun place to come to. So I don't think she really liked coming over.
Can you blame her?
You're listening to the Nacho Kids Podcast, where we discuss all things step family related. Real stories, real people, real help. Your hosts are the creators of the Nacho Kids Method and the Nacho Kids Academy Step Family Coaching Team, Lori and David Sims.
Welcome to episode 151 of the Nacho Kids Podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Back on that.
That's right. Let's go ahead and announce the winner of this week's Linda Dunham Nacho Kids Academy Scholarship.
All right.
You do the drum roll this time, David.
I'll do it like you do.
That works. The winner is Bridget C. Congratulations, Bridget C. Look for an email from us and we will get you started on your scholarship to the Nacho Kids Academy, courtesy of Linda Dunham.
All right.
All right. In just 1 week, David and I will be in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yep, we will be.
I looked at the weather and it's going to be like 80-something degrees, so I probably shouldn't take my boots.
Why not?
I don't know. Real cowgirls wear boots in the heat, right?
Oh, absolutely. Remember the time we went to the football game?
Oh, my gosh. 110 degrees and everybody's out there in shorts and skirts and boots. You'd have thought we were in Texas.
I know. There was a lot of boots going on that day.
Mm-hmm. You know, I used to enjoy going to the football games, but I don't really so much anymore.
Because you're getting old.
Yep. I don't like people as much as I used to.
That's not true.
It is true.
I think, no, it's not that you don't like people. You don't like the shenanigans of people when you go to a tailgating party, and we're talking about a college game here, but maybe the same is true for a pro game. I've never been to a pro game, so I don't know. But they're tailgating. Typically, it's a younger crowd. They've been drinking all day, and it can be a bit problematic.
Yeah. I guess I'm just over that. I'm old.
Yeah. You see poor people stumbling around and doing crazy stuff. Or then you get in the stands and everybody's hot and they're packed in like sardines and you got somebody who wants to fight somebody else.
Oh, yeah, that happened too.
Yeah. And so you just like, you know what? I just want to go home. I'll just watch this sitting in my living room. It's a lot more comfortable.
And the bathrooms are cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. But yeah, there does come a point in your life. Well, I won't say everybody, but certainly for us that you more enjoy being home or not being in the crowds, where when you were younger, it was you didn't want to be at home and you wanted to be in the crowds. Mm-hmm. Interesting how that changes.
Interesting.
Which is why I know now why I drove my parents crazy on vacation, because I wanted to go places to do things and be in the crowds and do this, do that, and run here and there. And they're like, this is supposed to be relaxing for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, vacation is usually not relaxing for the parents if the kids are along.
No, not at all. Then try, vacationing with your stepkids.
It can be done. Just learn to nacho first.
It can be done, but it is rough.
Look here. I know you ain't talking about my kid.
No, I'm talking about you.
You talking about your own kids.
I'm talking about you.
Mm-hmm. No, not talking about Lori. Well, I talked to my dad the other day.
Is he still dying?
He's still dying. And actually, we were planning his 75th birthday party.
Oh, really?
He wants a cake shaped like the number 7 and the number 5 because he's never seen those. I'm thinking, what? Where have you been? Well, what it is he saw his aunt had her 100th birthday party and there was a cake shaped like 100. So he said, I want a cake like Maxine's. And I'm thinking, when you get 100, you'll get one like Maxine.
You got 25 more years to go, buddy.
So anyway, he said, I just want a cake like that. I've never seen one. And I'm thinking, that shows how much you were a part of our birthday parties. Not that we ever had a cake like that with the number. We used to have the Barbie cakes, that the Barbie was sticking out of, and she had like a dress, and you ate the dress. Or a friend of mine is Amy. Her mom made me a Pink Panther cake one time for my birthday. But anyway, it's not like these just came around this year. The number cakes have been around forever. Ever.
He apparently doesn't watch all the cake baking shows like you do.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to tell him about that. But anyway, long story short, he's reminiscing about family and his grandmother, my great-grandmother. And he said, yeah, I was talking to Maxine, the 100-year-old. She said they used to call my dad's grandmother Bat.
Okay.
And I said, why? He said, because she was crazy as a bat and mean as a bat. So anyway, he keeps talking, and he said, yeah, I remember we were up there one year and visiting, and your cousin Chris, and my cousin Chris was born exactly a month after I was, said Chris wanted an ice cream. So she gave Chris an ice cream. And all the other kids, like there's a bunch of us, were like, I want one too. She said, no, those are Chris's.
Okay.
Keep in mind, I was not her step grandkid or step great grandkid, whatever. This was a nuclear family, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And she had no qualms whatsoever about giving one kid out of 10 to 15 kids an ice cream.
Well, that's why. It would cost $100 for ice cream.
No, because that was Chris's. Chris was the special one.
No, what it was is she didn't like Chris. And so she would give Chris that one ice cream to make y'all hate Chris.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, as I'm talking to my dad, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty crappy. And he said, there's something called being an adult. And she wasn't being one that day.
Okay.
And it hit me. A lot of people talk about Nacho Kids and I'm nachoing, but they're being petty. I brought my kids fast food and didn't get the step kid any because I don't like the step kid. That's not nachoing, and that's not being an adult.
That's not even being nice.
Right. So you can nacho, but you got to be an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So it hit me when I was talking to my daddy. Thank you, Daddy. You'll never listen to this, but thank you anyway. For pointing that out. I knew that grandparents had their favorites. Like, I was my granny's favorite, and I don't care what anybody else in my family says. I know I was, and that's okay. But I was also my Nana's least favorite. And again, this is nuclear families, y'all. Yep. The thing is, you don't say, you're my favorite in front of everybody. You wait till you're hugging them and you say, you're my favorite, Lori. And I say, I know, Granny, I know. And you don't get the kids all these presents and not get the least favorite anything or get the least favorite one, like my Nana did.
Yeah.
Bring Dawn a whole satchel full of presents and, oh, here, Lori, here's yours. And it was like a bubblegum machine ring.
Yeah. My grandmother will do that. She gives me a hug and says I'm her favorite. And then I tell her that she's my favorite grandmother. And then she slaps me and says, I'm your only grandmother. That's why.
She tells me I'm her favorite too.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And your aunt tells me I'm her favorite.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't like your sister.
Yeah. There's that thing that runs in my family. It's everybody wants to be somebody's favorite.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I am my favorite.
That's honestly, if you think about it, a lot of people don't like themselves enough to say that, and they should.
Mm-hmm.
So go like yourself today.
Go like yourself, people. We like you. Like yourself. And if you don't like yourself, no wonder nobody else does. That was horrible. I'm sorry. I take that back. Okay. Let's talk about our guest today, David.
All right.
Our guest today is an anonymous stepmom from California. Been blending 2.5 years. Stepson 2, stepdaughter 4, bio son 8. Have kids every other week, Monday through Monday. Hardest part of her blending? She felt they tried to blend too fast and felt she needed to be super stepmom from the start.
Mm-hmm.
And she felt a lot of pressure to be super stepmom from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Best advice? Anybody got a guess?
Nacho.
Something unique about her blend is the kids all get along well and genuinely love each other.
Yeah, my kids got along well with Jackson and genuinely loved him.
Huh?
Yeah.
You talking about your kids that I know?
Yeah.
All of them.
I mean, just because they pushed him down and ran over him and stuff like that, that's how they show love.
Oh, that when you say ran over, that reminds me that time he got ran over by the four-wheeler and Taylor comes in and we're talking and she's standing there because she'd been told before not to interrupt adults when they're talking. And she's just standing there. And finally I'm like, Taylor, you got something you need to say? And she's like, yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but Jackson got ran over by the four-wheeler.
Yeah, you stand there like 5 minutes. Everybody goes running outside and, Jackson's already been dragged to the porch by then.
So just a reminder, folks, if you teach your kids not to interrupt adults when they're speaking, to tell them it's okay if it's an emergency, if somebody's hurt. Jackson was okay, by the way.
Yeah. Probably because it ran over his head.
David. That ain't any nicer than it was when you said it 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
And it's still just as funny.
It's not.
He'll even agree with you. Or
no,
me.
he won't.
He will.
He'll agree with you.
Of course. So I'm saying.
He won't agree with me.
He'll agree with me. All right. You ready to get to listening?
Yeah.
All
right, folks, let's get to listening.
All right. Well, before we do, let's remind everybody, if you go to nachokidsacademy.com, we are there 24/7, 365 to help you out in your blend. There's tons of courses and coaching calls and a community of other step families that are there to help support you and get you the help you need to save your sanity in your relationships. So go check it out, nachokidsacademy.com.
David, I'm not sure what's my favorite part about the Academy. I like that the community is nothing like the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
It's not crazy. Everybody's really supportive of each other.
Yeah, they are.
I like the Q&A calls because at the end of the Q&A calls, we feel like we've accomplished something and helped the couples that have attended the Q&A call.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel better.
Yep.
And I love the challenges. Yes, I created them, but I still love them. The boot camp, the change your stinking thinking, and the self-love, they're awesome.
Yeah. Lots of great stuff in there.
Yep. And we're getting ready to start adding some more.
Mm-hmm. Sure enough. Got a whole long list of stuff.
Yeah. And next thing you know, we're going to be saying, we've got 1,012 courses.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, people are already joining. It's like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Look at all this content.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
right.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay, let's get to listening to the interview.
Mark, set, go. Today, we have an anonymous stepmom from California. Hey, anonymous stepmom from California. How are you doing?
I'm good, Lori. How are you?
Doing good. So tell us a little bit about your blend. How long have you been blending?
We have been blending for about 2.5 years, or a little over that.
Okay. And how many step kids, bio kids, hours kids?
I have one bio son, 8, and I have 2 step kids, girl 4 and boy 2.
Okay.
And no hours.
And how often do you have your bio son?
We actually happen to have the same schedule for all of the kids.
Okay.
So we have them every other week from Monday through the following Monday morning.
Okay. That makes it easy, doesn't it?
It does, because we get one entire week just to ourselves, so we're not parents.
Yes. I know my sister-in-law said something one time. She's like, I'm jealous. Y'all get kid-free weekends. We're like, just get divorced. It's okay. You too can have this. Now, you said you've got a stepson that's 2.
Yes. Interesting, right?
Yeah. So he wasn't born yet when y'all started blending.
No. So quick little story. We'll try to make it quick. But basically, my boyfriend and I met at work. At the time when I met him, he only had one daughter, and that's the 4-year-old. And he was actually not with the kid's mom. They're actually both from the same mom, but they were not together. They had not been together since the little one was 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the older one, I'm sorry, was 4 months. They split up. Eventually, I met my now boyfriend, and at the time we were just kind of hanging out. And then I guess come to find out when we decided to take things a little bit more serious, because we were kind of just doing our own thing. We were already dating. We were already together. A few months into the relationship, she tells him that she's pregnant, but she wasn't sure if it was his or not. So
at least she was honest.
Yeah. So that was interesting. So obviously, immediately when I found out, I wanted nothing to do with it. We stopped talking. I told him, figure that stuff out. I can't do this. It was just weird. So eventually they never tried it. They never even wanted to be together in the first place. And then they decided to keep parenting separately. So they would, share custody of their daughter. And then we eventually started hanging out. We dated. And I was always very honest with him, and I wasn't sure how it was going to work out. Just bringing a kid into a relationship, the whole situation just felt extremely weird to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it anyway. And then son came along, and they took the DNA test. Turns out it was his, and that's how we blended. So I've had the baby since he was born.
That's definitely unique.
Yeah.
So do you parent your stepson or your stepdaughter, either one? Because especially with you being around the baby from the beginning.
Yeah. So you know what? Obviously, when I found out about Nacho, I stopped. And I felt like I did not know who to talk to. I really was going nuts when, originally when we first moved in together, we thought we were going to move in together and it was going to be this really beautiful blend. My son was finally going to have some siblings and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out it was not that way at all. It was a lot different. I didn't have any close friends or anybody that I can really relate to that had stepkids or that had anything like my situation. I was pretty much a mom to this kid too.
Right.
So yes, when the baby was over, I was mom. I was doing the diapers, putting him to bed at night. I was doing it all.
Yeah. Especially at that age, it's harder to nacho, I guess, for lack of a better word, because they need somebody 24/7.
Yes. And at the time, stepdaughter was too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So stepdaughter needed somebody all the time too.
Yes. Yeah, it was very difficult.
So do you feel like since you were around both kids at such a young age that you felt like they were part your kids? Or, like when I came in, my stepsons were like 8, and 10. So I never went through those baby stages with them. And I think if you go through those baby stages, you create a stronger bond, at least in the beginning.
Yeah, yes, I would say. So before we moved in, of course, stepdaughter absolutely loved me and all that stuff. But once we moved in, because when we decided to move in together, I believe she was still 2 at the time. Yeah, she was still 2. And stepson was a few months. To be completely honest, I can't remember, maybe 4 or 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
So they were all really small. So, we moved in, and my son, he goes back and forth between dad and I. But dad and I have a pretty similar routine. Like, we have a bedtime for him at 8:00. And then, he goes to sleep. And then in the morning, he just has a routine that we were able to agree on that worked out for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
So when stepdaughter came in, she didn't like that there was rules and there was a bedtime and there was this and there was that. She hated it. And so blending the kids together, there was a lot of behavioral issues. And of course, when I came into this, I kept thinking, this is going to be great. Like, I have these bonus kids and I love them like they're mine. But it quickly turned out to be a lot more different than I expected. And there was tantrums, there was crying, there was hitting. Stepdaughter and my son didn't get along because my son would be, let's say, on his iPad. She would just walk by and smack him.
Oh gosh.
And yeah. And I'd be like, hey, you're not allowed to hit. That's not okay. And I would talk to her about it. And then you can just tell that once I started to parent them, I guess, she started to back off. And I was no longer somebody that she really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, daddy, this and that. And so it was very difficult. So that's pretty much what it was like at the very beginning.
Isn't it funny how quickly things change?
Yeah.
So either step parents need to stay in the date mode with how they treat the step kids, or they just, when they come in dating, they just need to start parenting, which we know is not going to happen.
Yes, you know what? It's true. Yeah, exactly. You can't expect somebody, and you can't just go into a situation thinking, I'm just going to be this kid's parent from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard when the kids, and I understand that they get confused, like, well, why are you telling me I need to put my shoes away when I can just leave them here? And you never said anything to me before. Why is it an issue now?
And I know a lot of people listening are thinking, she's 2. You know, she's going through the terrible 2s. She obviously didn't have that bedtime and structure before, but she's 2. You can't nacho a 2-year-old. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. And you know what? One of the things that I do want to mention is that before my boyfriend and I had all moved in together into our apartment, he lived with his parents too.
Oh.
He had like a little back area in the house. So he was obviously parenting, but when he would go to work, kids would stay with his mom. She was the babysitter. So it was, of course, you can only imagine what the grandma was like. And she didn't have the rules either. And they got to do and eat everything and anything that they wanted. And, you know, same goes with mom. At the time, mom was at home, I'm sorry. And, you know, so she had the kids all day, every day. She didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids were not used to, oh, now you have to go to daycare. Now, you know, you get picked up, you come home and we do activities or whatever it is that we have to do. And then there's showers and bedtimes and all that stuff. That wasn't what she was doing before. So I knew that it was hard for her to adjust. And I knew that it wasn't the most fun place to come to. So I don't think she really liked coming over.
Can you blame her?
I feel bad because, you know, I'm a mom, and initially when I came in thinking, you know, like, I'm going to try my best because this is how I would like my son to get treated with his stepmom and his dad. But it was very, very difficult.
Yeah. It's like going from the playground into, for lack of a better comparison, a school structure where you have to sit down and listen. And they're like, no, I want to go to recess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Bio-mom was pretty lax with her rules.
Yes. Bio-mom did not work until maybe a little less than a year ago. She just recently started working.
So when y'all had the kids, when you had the step kids, did they go to daycare the weeks y'all had them?
Yes. So they've always gone to daycare ever since we moved in here. They've always gone to daycare since we moved in together. That's when they started doing daycare. And then eventually mom was like, okay, maybe I should go to school or get a job. And she was doing school for a little bit. And so they agreed on one daycare because of how easier it would be for the kids. They already have to go to 2 different houses. So they decided, okay, the least we can agree on is a daycare, which they did. So that's what the kids started to do. And that we started to notice a big change when the kids were going to daycare. There was more structure, and they were able, well, not so much the baby, but the older one, you know, you can tell there was a big difference.
Right, because she was getting that structure that she needed.
Correct, yes.
So when they were with Bio-mom and Bio-mom wasn't working, did they still go to daycare then, or were y'all able to find a daycare that let them come every other week?
Yes, we actually were able to find a daycare that would let them come every other week. And we know that our situation is pretty unique, and a lot of daycares don't allow that. But we've been able to find that something that worked out for us.
That is awesome.
Yes.
More daycares should do that. But like you said, at least they weren't going from one daycare when they were with y'all to another daycare when they were with Bio-mom, because that would really suck.
Correct, yeah. And that's actually something that I felt like I made it a point to my boyfriend, because I told him, you know, I've done that since my kid was 3, and his dad and I, you know, we didn't always get along, but when it came to our son, I feel like we did whatever was in his best interest, not necessarily what worked out for us and in our favor. And school has always been important, and the least we can have him going from place to place, the better for him. Right.
Definitely. So do you deal with Bio-mom at all? Or do you let your husband or your boyfriend deal with her?
Oh, my God. You know, that's a whole other story on it. We initially did. Well, first of all, obviously, because of this whole situation, she was pregnant at the time we started dating. And I could understand that she didn't really care for me. So there was absolutely no contact until we actually moved in together. But prior to her finding out that we were going to move in together, she was really upset with him. And she made it very clear she just could not believe that we were going to move in together. And so we did move in together eventually. And sometime along the way, I don't remember exactly how it happened, but prior to actually us moving in, I remember one time we were dropping off the kids because he used to have a different schedule for them. And it was like, I think Wednesday, Thursday, and then every other weekend. So they used to follow that schedule. So in one of those changes, I was there and, she just was so upset to see me there for the first time, I guess. So I remember her cursing at me while she was getting the baby out of the car.
Oh, gosh.
And I just kind of stood back and just let everything happen. I didn't say anything. So I ended up coming home, or whatever, we let it go. And then eventually she did talk to me and, she apologized for doing that and we got over it. And then, like I mentioned, kids moved in here, they started going to daycare. And that's kind of when I started taking the role of I would get the kids ready in the morning, take my son to the program that he goes to before school, or I would take him to school directly. And then the step kids, I would take them to daycare.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I would pick them up after work as well. So I was picking them up and dropping them off. And from that, it led on to, when there was issues at daycare, because I was usually the only one they saw and not my boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
they would tell me if, the kids needed something or something happened with the kids or anything like that. And then I would pass that information on to either mom or dad. And at first they were both okay with it. But eventually when things became like, hey, like they showed up to daycare with sweaters and sweatpants and it's hot. It's like 80 degrees outside. Why the little one coming to daycare like that? And the little one's the other girl, is wearing a dress.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just tiny little things. And I was like, hey, just FYI, daycare said not to bring the kids in sandals anymore because so-and-so stepped on a nail. And then she would get offended and be like, you know what, my kids can wear whatever they want. Things like that. It was very immature stuff. And then eventually I was like, okay, you know what, maybe I don't want to talk to her anymore. And so I started having my boyfriend just do the communicating. I would tell him, hey, like daycare said this today or this happened today. And so then he would do the communicating after that. And then there was one time where she got offended over, it was a shoe thing that I mentioned, the sandal.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went off on me. And then I said, okay, you know what? I'm not dealing with this anymore. So I completely stopped talking to her. I even had to block her number because she was just going nuts. So I just said, hey, if she needs anything, she can text you and then you let me know until she's ready, to be an adult about things. And otherwise, I don't need to speak to her. And he was okay with that. Of course, he had to be.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, there was this past October, it was stepson's birthday and she didn't have him that week. Long story short, we actually just let her take the kids. And then we told him like, hey, he told him, it was him communicating with her, just letting her know that they needed to be back home by a certain time because we were having a birthday party here. She agreed. First of all, she showed up 2 hours late to pick them up. And then she dropped them off like an hour and a half late after that. And then by the time the kids came back, they were really tired and they, of course, they wanted to be with mom. So they were crying. And then we had been waiting for such a long time and we actually needed to pick up the food for the birthday party. So my boyfriend left to go pick that up and he said, just stay here, finish up whatever the decoration you're doing and she'll be here soon. So she dropped them off and she just walked into the gate of my apartment, didn't say hi. And I was like, oh, okay, so whatever. I kept walking behind them. And then she starts asking her daughter, where do you live? And her daughter points to the house. And so she starts walking her to our apartment and I'm just kind of walking behind and like, okay, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So then I was like, oh, here, like, I'll give you a hand. Mind you, she's actually pregnant now. She was carrying like a bunch of bags in her hand. And I was like, here, I'll take them. So as I tried to reach for the bag, she snatched them and she said, don't effing grab things out of my hand. And I was like, whoa, I'm just trying to help you. Like, your hands are heavy. The kids are crying. You're struggling. And she was upset, got in my face, told me she was going to kick my ass and all these things.
Wow.
And then I was like, whoa, like the kids are here. What is wrong with you? Why are you acting this way? She ended up leaving, said she was taking her kids with her because dad wasn't there to receive them. I said, okay, that's fine. Your kids, you're the mom. And I just walked into my apartment, closed the door, called him, said, hey, I don't know what's going on. You need to figure it out. I'm not dealing with this. This is the last time I help with any of the exchanges because this is not okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely not okay.
That.
Now, I find it interesting that she didn't want to be in a relationship with him. You said they didn't want to be in a relationship together, but it bothered her when you came into the picture.
Yes. And I don't know why that was because like I mentioned, they had already been split up since their first daughter was 4 or 6 months, something like that. They had some sort of altercation where she hit him and threw the walker, the baby's walker at him. So police were called and everything and they escorted her out, but they didn't do any any charges or anything like that because on her, because she was the one that got physical, because apparently they said that since she had just had the baby, she could possibly be suffering from postpartum depression. So they didn't want to do anything. So they just had her move out. And that was when they had split up. And it wasn't until months later, I guess, when they messed around once or twice. And eventually she got pregnant with the second child.
Yeah. There's that saying, be careful who you sleep with.
Right. Yeah. And that's another thing too, where it was just so crazy to me because she knew, and I'm not, to each their own, but she knew they both knew they weren't in the position to have another kid. And I don't think they intended to do that, but obviously, what you're doing, the consequences. And I guess they just both really didn't expect that to happen. And they felt, or she thought that she didn't have a choice, but, to have the child and he's been there through that the entire time.
You would think with him knowing she was crazy, he wouldn't even want to sleep with her.
You know what? And that's what I told him too. And I think that he looked at her a lot differently than he does now because now he understands and he knows. Because the entire time that they worked together, she never worked. She kind of went to school, but not really. And then she didn't work. And even when they were split up, she wasn't working because her excuse was, I can't find a babysitter. My mom doesn't want to help me take care of my daughter and I can't find a babysitter. And it was always like that. That's why I always sound like, what were you thinking? Like, how are you okay with this? And she's manipulating him. She needed money to pay for her groceries. She needed money for the diapers. She needed money for her car insurance, all these things. And he was giving everything to her that she needed when they weren't together. Mm-hmm. And she still lives at home with mom in the living room with the two kids, and she's pregnant again.
Oh, gosh.
But not by him this time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's got to be hard for the kids. And I hate it for her.
Absolutely. And I feel really bad because I feel like I genuinely tried to, when I came into the situation, I had really good intentions, especially knowing the situation I had with my kid's stepmom at the very beginning and how unapproachable she was. I tried to introduce myself and it wasn't the best. And I came in telling him like, hey, I don't want this for us. I want us to be able to get along and do all that stuff and to have communication. But I think that I came in not knowing what blending really was like. And I just imagined something totally different.
Join the club, honey. Join the club.
Yeah.
We all have these fairy tale dreams of what the blend is going to look like. And even if we know it won't be easy, we still think, oh, we'll have picnics together and play family game night. And, some people that's possible, but the majority of people it's not. It's hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that your son has a stepmom.
Yes.
How do y'all get along now?
We're good. We are all in good terms on our end. At the beginning, we didn't really get along so well. It maybe took like a year, maybe two. And it was just because I was talking to dad and she would just randomly text me on the side about something I was texting to dad about. And there was that kind of conflict.
She was overstepping.
Yeah, she was overstepping. And, we worked things out and our son was, he had a hard time at the, because he was a little bit older. And for some reason, I just felt like he just understood things differently. And that's actually, sorry, we're going to go back to my stepdaughter real quick.
You're fine.
Her parents had been split up since she was like 4-6 months. So that's her going between two homes has been normal for her entire life. Versus my son, we split up when he was 3. And so he knew like, hey, my mom and my dad used to live together. So as he was getting older, he did start asking questions and, we were never married, but to him, he was always like, why are you guys divorced? Why can't you guys be back together? So stepmom came into his life shortly after we split up. Maybe like 4 months afterwards. Then she moved in quickly. That was a big, I guess it was kind of an issue at first because it was like, well, not an issue, but I guess I just didn't know how to react to it because suddenly there's this like person taking care of my kid and taking him to school and all that stuff. And it was really weird. I didn't know how to handle it at that time, but we overcame all of that and we get along fine now. There's no reason for us to fight about anything. I text her when I'm going to pick him up or she texts me when she's going to drop him off or, because he has a sister on dad's side.
Okay.
And so if there's a birthday or anything like that, or grandma wants to pick him up, we all communicate and there's no reason for us to fight. So everything works out pretty well with us.
That is great. That is really good. And it's so much healthier for the kids.
Absolutely. And I think we can truly see that because, I can see how much my son loves his stepmom. And but he knows, he understands that that's my stepmom. And he doesn't call her mom or anything. He calls her by her name. But when he refers to her and to everybody, he'll be like, either, if he's talking to me, he'll be my stepmom. But if he's talking to somebody else, he'll be like my mom. And then vice versa with my boyfriend. We never pushed on to him, he's your dad or he's your stepdad. It's, this is his name and you can choose to call him whatever. And he just calls him by his name. But when other people talk to him and ask about him, he calls him his stepdad.
Right. Yeah. That's how we do it too.
Yeah.
So you've got both of these babies, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the little girl was having some issues, but things seemed to get better.
Mm-hmm.
How is her relationship, not only with you now since you started nachoing, but with your son?
So the relationship with my son has gotten a lot better. There was times, like I mentioned in the very beginning, she didn't really know how to behave. Also because she was never told, like, hey, you can't hit. She was always able to get away with everything. And if she did something, oh my God, she hit. That's so cute. Oh my God, she's mad. That is so cute. Mm-hmm. And then, so obviously when there was rules here, it's like, no, you can't hit. And I'm not saying my son's better or anything, but my son is he's just not aggressive. He's actually one of the sweetest kids you'll ever meet. Versus her, she is a little bit more aggressive. Even till now, she comes off a little strong to other kids, and it's always they don't want to play with me. But she comes in and she's like, "This is my toy," from the very beginning. So yeah, so she had quite a hard time adapting, and I think the other biggest thing was her feeling like she's sharing her dad not only with my son but with me, because she was the only girl around for him, and she did not like the attention. Even till now, I think she still struggles with it a lot. We'll be in the car, or him and I will be sitting down just talking, and she will walk by him. She'll be like, "Daddy," and then he'll stop and talk to her, and he'll be like, "Yes," and she'll be like, "I love you." And it's always, "Hey, Daddy, I love you." Anytime I'm talking to him, she still has a hard time with that. But I also feel like they're still going through the whole, okay, my mom now has a boyfriend. My dad lives with my stepmom. I feel like she's still trying to navigate that. And I feel like she still has a difficult time. And we kind of try to explain things to her like, hey, you need to say excuse me, or hey, like I have to tell her, like, I'm not trying to take your dad. But yeah, she had a very hard time. And with my stepson now, they actually have a better relationship. Of course, it's the whole, she's younger, she kind of gets on my nerves kind of thing. But that's just the normal sibling issues they have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful with that, because if you try to stop them from interacting because they do fight, then you can sometimes stop that sibling bonding from happening.
Right. And it's actually one of the things that I did learn on the podcast too, because at first I was very like, no, like, why is she hitting my kid?
Yeah.
I kind of went into mommy mode, and I was like, no, like, don't hit my kid. And I truly would get upset, and I would tell him like, hey, like, she's hitting him. And then he would talk to her, but that was it. There was no timeout. Not even like, I don't even know. I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, but like a positive timeout, like, hey, sit in the thinking chair and think about what you did, versus making it such a negative experience for her, because she was having, I guess you could say she was having a hard time with the blending and all that. But she never had to worry about getting in trouble, because it was just like, hey, stop hitting. And that's where it ended. There was no, there's a timeout, or I'm going to take this away from you, or why did you do that? And, she would not like to say sorry. So yeah, that's how that went too.
Yeah.
And then the little one, oh my God, the little one was such a joy. And like I said, my son is 8 now. And so I wanted to have a kid for the longest time. It just has not been the right time, obviously. So when that kid came in our lives, I thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, I get to have a kid that's not really my kid, that I can get rid of every other week. And it was great the first 6-7 months maybe, but he eventually turned into this little monster. I know it sounds so mean to say, but if I could say, he literally cried, Lori, every day. And he had this cry that it's loud. It screeches in your ears. It is loud. And it was also sometimes cute, because it sounded like he was laughing. But he would cry so much that I literally would cry too. And I would just walk away. And I went through it, Lori, because like I mentioned, I picked them up from school, dropped them off at daycare, picked them back up, did all that stuff. I came home, I cooked, we read or did whatever we did. We went to the park, and then I got them ready again for the night and brush your teeth, take a shower, all that stuff, get into bed, change, all that. And it was very difficult because there was a time where my boyfriend was working nights as well. He had 2 jobs at one point, and I had all of them. And so it was a lot of work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
It was very difficult for me.
Why you were doing all that stuff. Was it because you just came in wanting to be super stepmom, or was it because your boyfriend wasn't able to because of work or things like that?
So, no, I feel like initially I came in and I did all that stuff because I guess you could say I wanted to be super stepmom, not really knowing that I wanted to be super stepmom. Mm-hmm. I think I kind of just did it because it felt so normal for me to do. Like, I came in like, yeah, of course, well, I'm the woman. Like, I need to do the cooking. Yeah. I need to do the cleaning. I need to do the laundry. I need to do all that. I don't know if it's because society norm or because I just felt like I needed to do it, but it also felt very natural. Like, I knew that the kids had to shower, and I just took care of it. It's not because my boyfriend was lazy or he didn't care to help. I just did it. It was the routine I had for my son, and it was the routine I expected for them to have as well. And I think that's kind of where I didn't stop myself and think, whoa, like, they're not used to this. I should have known they weren't going to like this, or I should have known it was going to be harder, but I genuinely did not realize how much harder it would be. And it took a toll on me. And then eventually my boyfriend started working, so that it became, okay, he does it because I don't let him. Mm-hmm. And then he doesn't help with that stuff because he's at work. And by the time he gets home, I'm like, oh my God, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that today. Like, I'm going nuts. And then he would apologize and we would talk about it and he would address it to the kids. But I don't even know if this makes a difference, but I feel like because they're so young, they don't understand what they did wrong because that happened yesterday.
Right.
So I was trying to figure out, do they know what they did wrong yesterday?
Right.
But that was difficult. Yeah.
Because it's so long ago. That might as well be a month for a kid.
Exactly. And that's what I thought too. But yeah, eventually I started doing everything because he was starting to work the night shift as well. And then eventually that stopped because I told him, I can't do this anymore. I'm going nuts. I would literally cry at night and tell him, like, I can't do this. Like, I know that I said that I could take this on and be a stepmom to these kids, but they're driving me nuts and I can't do it. I need your help. And so, yeah, he did stop working, but I also stopped working my full-time job that I was working at the time. And I had opened up my small business and I was able to work from home. So then again, I took it back on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you took it back on, how did you feel?
I was a mess. I went back to crying, and it felt because I was at home, I had more responsibility and there was more things that I needed to clean, and the house just never felt clean. And I feel like it became worse and worse. And, mm-hmm. I had to deal with the kids. I had to do this. I had to do that with them. And it was extremely hard on me. And I feel like it started to take a toll on my mental health. I kept thinking, like, why am I dealing with this? Like, my son is fine. Like, I can give him the iPad and he's completely fine. Or I can do this with him and he doesn't need all the attention. Versus the other kids, they needed me to do everything for them. Everything. And it was mm-hmm. draining and it was difficult, like even eating, like the kids would go to the yogurt, they want to eat chips and yogurts and everything that was there. And my son, he would wait or he would ask for a snack versus the kids were in the kitchen the entire time. And I was like, okay, well, we need rules. So we started putting down rules, and Dad, when he was here, he really wouldn't enforce them. And I think he felt guilty at some point because he was working all the time. So he wasn't really enforcing the stuff, and I just felt like it wasn't helping me. So
right,
it was really bad. It got really bad to a point where I felt like I couldn't do it anymore, and I wanted to separate. And then I stopped myself because I do love this person. When the kids are not here, him and I are perfect. We're good. It's only when the kids are here that we're fighting and we argue because of what's going on with the kids, not necessarily because we have any issues of our own.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not feel like that a lot of times you weren't paying as much attention to your son because you were dealing with his kids?
Absolutely. And that was one of the biggest things too, because I am really close to my son, and he did go from being my only child to having to share the attention with two other kids. And I could tell that he knew that they weren't the most best behaved kids at the beginning. And I think he knew that because he's like, Mom, so-and-so's doing this again. And I could tell because he would tell me, like, I miss when it was just me and you in our apartment. I miss this. And I started to feel extremely guilty. On top of that, I was starting to feel really guilty because I felt like I couldn't love these two other kids as my own, like I thought I would. I started to sort of, I don't even know what word to use, but I started to dread the weeks the kids were going to come back. I was happy to see my son, but I dreaded them coming back. It was hard on me. It was difficult. It was a lot of work. That was very hard.
Yeah, it is hard. And a lot of people don't understand that. They don't realize that 3 years from now, you'll think, oh, I didn't spend as much time with little Johnny because I was worried about the stepkids.
Exactly.
And I mean, that can follow you your whole life. And a lot of times it's hard to forgive yourself for that. And, you know, the way I look at it is you can't change it. What's in the past is the past.
Yeah.
But what you can do is from this day forward, make sure that you are giving your bio kids the attention they need, or you will end up regretting it later.
Yes. And that's something that I've really tried after, you know, I think I was listening to, I remember just being in the car, and I actually remember I was in Arco gas station and I was about to get out and pump gas, but I was on my way to LA, and I was trying to find a station to listen to some podcast. And I remember, I think it was Stepmom Strong, where you were a guest. And I heard you talk about it. And I heard you talk about, you know, what nachoing is and how you came up with the word nacho and all that stuff. And I remember just sitting in the car and not even pumping the gas because I was so stuck on what you were saying. And I was desperate. I needed something. Like, I had already gone to therapy for myself. I had already done everything that I thought would work. I thought, okay, maybe I should bond more with the stepkids. Maybe I should do this. And I felt like everything I was trying was just not working. So I was desperate. And I heard the podcast and I was like, whoa, I finished your episode and I didn't listen to anything that they had after that. And I went straight to the Nacho Kids podcast. And that's kind of where I started to pick up everything. And I think I started to validate my feelings for the first time because, like I mentioned, I don't know anybody in my situation. I don't know anybody with stepkids my age. I'm 29 and a lot of my friends don't have kids. So that was very difficult because I didn't know anybody and I didn't know who to talk to. And even when I would tell my boyfriend, hey, like, I'm feeling this way towards the kids and I feel bad. And, you know, he would kind of look at me like, what do you mean? Like, how could you feel that way? And I didn't know how to express it. So I just wouldn't say it anymore because I felt like I was being rude or I was being mean. And so when I started listening to your podcast, and I realized that it is okay to not love them like your own, like you're not a bad person for that.
Yeah.
It was just life-changing, to be completely honest with you.
I am so thankful that you heard us on her podcast because you know that you're not the only one going through this, and it's hard. And even if you had friends that had stepkids, say they become a stepmom when the kid was 5, they're not going to understand the same dynamics because you came in when the kids were 2 and a couple of months old.
Exactly.
There are so many variables. And then a lot of people will say to you, how can you not love those kids as your own? You've been in their life for basically forever because they're not your kids. There's something about DNA that cannot be dismissed.
And it's true. And again, I have tried my hardest from the very beginning. And like I mentioned, because I understand that my blend is unique and I've been there since they were babies and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, and listening to the podcast and from the very beginning, I went back to the first episode, and that's kind of where I've made my way. And now every Friday I tune in because I want to know, because I feel like even though I am not showing and I'm using these methods, I feel like there's so much more to learn, especially the kids being so young. And everybody's situation is different and unique, and everybody touches on different topics. And for me, I feel like I needed every tool that I could get because these kids were so little when they were brought into my life. And one of the things that I tell my boyfriend all the time is, you will never understand what it's like to be a step parent, a stepmom to your kids, because you're obviously not in the situation. With my kid, you don't have to deal you are a step parent to him, but you guys have a great relationship because you don't have to do anything for him. His dad and I have a great relationship. The stepmom do too. We all communicate. There's no issues. There's no problems. So it's easy for you. You don't have to do anything for him at all. But your kids, I'm the one that's taking them to daycare, picking them up, doing the cooking, doing the cleaning. And at the end of the day, they leave and I don't know anything about them unless I ask you. And that's where it comes in. I don't know anything about them until they come back. And when they come back, sometimes they come back in a bad mood because they don't want to be there and they want to go back to mom's house, or they come back and the little boy is crying the first 2 days because he's trying to adjust to being here. And it's difficult. And it's sad because, they're little and I get that. But it also played a really big toll on my mental health because it's like, come on, like I've had you since you were a baby, or I've had you since you were little. What do you mean you don't love me? And I think that to me was the hardest thing. Like, I know that I could get upset at my son, maybe yell at him, and he still loved me. Versus these kids, if I yelled at them or said anything in a different tone, they were mad and they were crying and they wouldn't talk to me for like an hour or so. And they would just stick around dad. And that hurt me because it's like, how do you not love me? I love you. And then I started to realize, you know what? It's okay. They don't love me. I don't really need to love them either. And eventually I did start to get very angry at them. And it wasn't, and I feel bad for even saying it, but I truly felt really upset. And I sometimes can't even express what kind of feelings I had. I just was not happy. It was very difficult for me.
Yeah, girl, I remember those feelings all too well. And, a lot of people will bash the Facebook group, which I know there's a lot of people in there that should not be in there. And there's a lot of people in there that don't want help. They just want to complain. But when somebody says, I despise my stepkids, I will get messages, even though the Nacho group is a lot more lenient with people saying that thing or saying stuff like that. I will still get messages about how horrible my Facebook group is. It's not. Y'all, that's why I created that group, because I was there. I didn't want anything bad to happen to these kids, but I would have been 100% okay if they never came back to visit.
You know what? It's so sad, but I get it because I feel like you all, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, I guess, but I don't feel now what I used to feel before. Like, of course, I still get the feelings where like, you can come back, not come back and I'll be fine. But before I was just very angry, and now I'm not because of Nacho.
Right. Yeah. And I was like that too. I would get angry on the way home before I came home, knowing they were here.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. And I saw somebody say the other day, with gas prices going up, just sit in your car, don't ride around the block. But I did. I dreaded coming home. I dreaded hearing them eat. It was just so stressful. And like you said, I was angry. And when we're angry, we take it out on our significant others, even on our bio kids, because we're snappy. And they don't deserve that. And everybody thinks nachoing is just disengaging, and that's not it. One of the things is realizing that, hey, these kids are struggling with this too.
Yeah.
It's hard for little Johnny, being 2 years old, to be with his mom for a week and then leave his mom. As much as he may like you or not like you, doesn't really matter, because his world flips upside down every other week.
Exactly, yeah.
And granted, he will get used to it. My son, his dad and I had split up before he was born. So my son's only known us being apart. So he's used to going. But even when he was little, he'd say, I don't want to go. And some people will fault me for this and say I shouldn't have said it, but it was the truth. And I'm very honest. And I said, I'm sorry, honey, but you have to go because your daddy is given time by the court system.
Right.
And the judge says that you have to go. And I remember he was probably 4 or so, and he didn't want to go to his dad's. And I said kind of the same thing. And he's like, I need to talk to that judge. And I'm like, the judge isn't going to not make you go just because you don't like going, Aww. Since birth, his life has been dictated by a court order. And so I didn't see anything wrong with telling him that. Right. And it seemed to make it easier when he realized that I wasn't the one, I wasn't like wanting to get rid of him.
Good, because at the end of the day, kids don't know that unless you tell them. And I feel like I like to be completely honest with my son in every way that I can, and obviously age appropriate for him so that he understands what's going on. Because they deserve that.
Right. Yeah. And, I didn't go into everything with him, but it was
of course.
just somebody else is saying that this has to happen. And no, he may not have known what the court system was, but again, he understood it's not mommy's getting rid of you. And I didn't go through mommy doesn't want you to go either, because that would have just made it harder for him.
Right.
But I do remember I had to take him to counseling because he was having some issues and he was little. Like I said, he was 2 or so. And I would tell the therapist, I said, he doesn't want to go. And I'll say, oh, you're going to have fun and you're going to have a great time. She said, stop doing that. And I'm thinking, what? And she said, stop doing that. You don't know if he's going to have a good time. Oh. You don't know how he feels when he's there. And if you say, oh, you're going to have a good time and all this stuff, and then he doesn't, then he feels like that you lied to him. I never thought of it that way.
And it kind of goes back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. She said, quit making it sound like he's going to the circus.
Oh. Yeah, that really hits you.
Yep.
Yeah, my son was doing the same thing, therapy, because he had issues at school, and the teacher was like, he's a really sweet kid, but for whatever reason, he's throwing tantrums, and those are things that we were not seeing at home, Dad and I, especially at Dad's house, because Dad's a little bit more strict. But there's just issues that were happening at school because of what was happening at home. He was just sad, and he didn't understand why Dad and Mom weren't together. So we definitely did therapy,
right,
and that really helped.
And they don't know how to express it any more than we know how to express certain things. A lot of times during this interview, we've both said, I don't know really how to explain it, but it's different. Or I can't really put it into words. They don't know how to do that either. And we're a lot older than they are.
And we can't expect them to. And the way they do it is just by crying and being upset.
Yep. Being a brat, tantrums, throwing stuff, being defiant, all that. And I know when I was so angry prior to nachoing, I could not see that David was struggling in the blend. I could not see that the kids were, because I was so focused on how I felt.
Yeah.
But once I started nachoing, I was able to go, you know what? Everybody's struggling in this, and we have to give everybody grace. And I'm not saying that we should let the kids beat us up or anything like that. I mean, don't take it to extremes. Yeah. But when they're having a bad day, when they come in from school, it's okay. They're allowed to have a bad day.
Right, of course. And I understand that.
Yeah. They, shouldn't be allowed to throw things at you and cuss at you, of course, but it's okay that they have a bad day.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree, because I dealt with it with my son personally. And then, when the kids were coming over, I started seeing it with them eventually. But everything that you're saying, it's so crazy how, talking to somebody that can relate, or you can say something and they know what it's like. I have found it very difficult to find somebody that relates to me, or I can relate to, and, bring things up, and they validate that it's totally okay for you to feel that way. You're not a bad person. You're doing your best.
And there's a lot of Facebook groups, stepmom groups, even podcasts where they will shun you for feeling this way. And that's not right.
Right.
Our feelings are real, and we have to be true to them. And when we start feeling overwhelmed, we have to find a way to relieve the pressure. And that's what nachoing's about, lowering that stress. Yes.
And I feel like I mentioned, because I came in the blend thinking, things were going to be so positive. I was going to be hands-on with the kids, and I wanted to so badly get along with the mom so that we can have a good blend. And that's kind of how I came into all of this, thinking everything was going to be good, and I wanted it to be better than what I had experienced personally with my kid's stepmom and my kid's dad, that I wanted that to happen for us. But I didn't realize that it was not going to be as easy. And, our situation was different from their situation. And, like I mentioned, Mom didn't work. So even though Dad, had the same amount of time as her, he still had to pay her child support because she didn't want to work. So, that was difficult too, because it's obviously taking from us. And I'm just like the kids are here and they have everything they need, and you still have to pay child support. And even then, she gives up certain days because she, God knows, wants to do something. And so she hands off the kids to his mom or to us or to her mom. And so I would get upset about it. And then there was like certain like holidays where they needed to be picked up at a certain time, or it was her turn or it was our turn. And they were going back and forth through text arguing about whose day it was. And it's like, you guys have a court order, follow it or go back and get a new court order, because they still actually only have a court order for the daughter, not the son.
Oh, okay.
So it's not even updated. And then that was another thing that started causing stress, was just that. I would get so angry about the communication, and I was getting upset for things that didn't even involve me, that had absolutely nothing to do with me. Obviously,
yes,
they did kind of involve me in some sort of way, because if we had plans and we had to switch them out because she couldn't pick up the kids or she changed minutes and plans last minute, it would obviously affect our plans. So that was the only time. But other than that, like, there were things that I was stepping into that I didn't even realize I was doing to myself, that I didn't need to be a part of it. But in that moment,
yes.
I felt like I took on that responsibility. I took on that anger. I took on that, resentment, and I got upset. And I'd be like, how come she's not picking them up? How come she's not doing this? I would do that, not realizing that what I was doing was wrong too. She wasn't the only person that was wrong. I was wrong about it. And I needed to step back and be like, well, if he's not that angry about it, why should I be angry about it?
Right. And it puts him in a bad situation, because he's thinking, or he may be thinking, I get my kids longer, and it doesn't bother him. He's thankful for it. And you're upset about it. So it puts him in a bad situation, because, he doesn't want to say, I'm just glad I get my kids longer. And then you're like, well, what about me? We had plans.
Right.
And it just puts him in the middle.
Yeah. And I think at the beginning too, I can assume that's probably a big reason why her and I stopped getting along, was because he started putting up boundaries, and you can't do this, or you can't just drop them off, or you can't just pick them up whenever you want. It needs to be at a set time, or no, you can't just have money because you need it. You need to do something on your end too. And it was very difficult, I guess, at the beginning for her to understand that. And I feel like that's kind of why she started to become so angry, because she was no longer able to push him around how she was used to. And she wasn't able to manipulate any situation like she was before, because I'd be like, no, like, you have just as much rights as she does. So I did kind of step into that, but eventually I stopped, and I no longer deal with any of their things. I completely nacho all that stuff. In fact, with the whole, the little one, we decided that he wanted to get potty. We decided we should potty train him. We tried the first time, didn't work out. I guess mom tried, and he was yelling at the top of his lungs, and he did not want to sit. But then he came back to us, and I was like, you know what? Let me try it over the weekend. Dad was working. He picked up a shift over the weekend, so I stayed home with all the kids, and I took off his diaper, and I kept sitting him on the toilet. We did the whole few minutes, all that stuff, and eventually he started to understand it. And so when I took him back to daycare, I told him, hey, he's in a diaper today. You guys can please help out with that. Mom picks him up today. Mom picked him up and did not put him on the toilet at all. So then he comes back, and it's so crazy, Lori. He's potty trained here, but he's not potty trained at school and at her house. He will not sit on the toilet. But here, he'll get home. I need to go potty, and we'll sit him on the toilet, and he'll go. So kids know, and they pick and choose. Yeah, and he's potty trained here, so it's weird.
That is weird. It's like at work. We know what we can get away with. We know what we can't.
Exactly. And I know the kids know they can get away with things with her. And I haven't said anything, but I tell him, like, hey, he's little. He needs to know that either you guys are going to do no diapers and just underwear, or you guys are going to do pull-ups. But if he has pull-ups, he thinks he could just go there. There's no use in using the pull-ups, because if you take them off, he will tell you, hey, I need to go potty. But they're claiming that he's not ready, but they're not. I feel like mom is not really doing what she should on her end. And at first, I was getting really upset about it, and I was getting annoyed, because I just put in all this work. And then came that whole thing where you get people pick and choose when I could be stepmom or not. Like, they choose when I have a say or not. Yeah. And so that, again, that's
when it conveniences them.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just, I ended up telling him, you know what, like, I turned off the notifications for the kids' daycare. If the kids need diapers or wipes, or they need anything, you tell me and I will take them. But if you don't, or you get them ready and just let me know where they're at and I'll take them to daycare. Because there came a point too where mom was not sending diapers and wipes to school, and I was constantly restocking. I would tell him, hey, are you telling her that she hasn't brought this or she hasn't diapers? And he's like, oh no, or yes, I already told her. But he wouldn't communicate what was going on. So then I would get upset. And then I realized, you know what? I need to Nacho it. So I deleted the app off my phone and I told him, whenever you need help, let me know. I'll still pick up the kids because it works out that way better for us. I don't mind it, but I won't go out of my way to do any of the extra stuff anymore. The shower stuff, you know, I completely let him take care of it for his kids. Sometimes I'll help with them, but if I don't feel like it, if I'm just not having a good day or if I'm tired or I could just see the kids are acting up, I just won't deal with it. And he does. And he's really well with it. He does really well with it. So it works out. Good.
So you do it if you want to, and he doesn't expect you to.
Correct, because he's never expected me to. So every time, since from the very start, whenever I started complaining and I started feeling everything or realizing all these things were going on, and I started to, okay, where is this stemming from? And I realized, you know, I'm angry because of the kids, or I'm upset because I have to do all of this, or I feel like I have to do all of this. And so I told him, like, hey, like, I get that I'm working from home now, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to take on everything else that comes with it. So I need your help. So eventually, little by little, I started letting him know what I needed from him and how he could help me. And he is great. He really is amazing. He's a great dad and he's a great partner. He does everything that he needs to do. You know, sometimes he doesn't address things with mom and bring things up. But, you know, again, that's kind of things that I just need to learn how to Nacho. But as far as like the even my cooking, like I just like, hey, I don't want to cook today, and he'll do it. Things like that with getting the kids ready. And I'll tell him, you know what, so-and-so is getting on my nerves today. That's all you. And he'll do it. He'll take care of it. And I can see him struggle sometimes too. And it's funny. And I just like sitting in my bedroom and I can hear him arguing with them in the restroom. Like, hey, like, you're not doing this or you're not doing that. And I can hear how frustrated he is. And then I'll bring it up to him like a day or two later. Like, hey, look, do you realize what's going on? Do you realize how you're finally seeing and dealing with your kids' behavior now versus it being me all the time, me being the bad one? You know, so-and-so has certain rules for me, but my dad doesn't. And why is that? Right. And I kept telling him, like, I feel like I'm the bad guy because I'm the one that says, okay, you know what? Here, you're done. Give me that toy. You need to sit down and think about what you did, or things like that. Now I let him deal with it. And I can see a huge difference in the relationship that I have with the kids. And that's something that I also learned from your podcast was that doesn't mean I'm completely stepping away. It just means that I do need to step back and then rebuild that relationship with the kids. And now we get along so well. And I noticed that the little one doesn't come here crying on Mondays and Tuesdays. He's good about it. He's happy to be here. And it's because I think I'm happier when I don't have to deal with them so much.
Right. And it's probably helped your relationship with your significant other because you're not complaining about his kids.
100%.
And he gets to see it on his own.
Yes, 100%. I definitely agree because I could see a huge difference in our relationship when they're here, because that's what I mentioned. We were not getting along, and even when they're not here. And then I can see us being a team, like, okay, like, it's your turn for this, or it's my turn for this. And I really love that about him, that, you know, since I heard about Nacho and I explained it to him, and I remember I was in tears that day, and I was like, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but I'm going to step back, and I hope that you can understand that I'm not stepping back because I don't love the kids or I don't love you. It's just that I feel this way, and it's making me feel this way. And obviously we're having conflict, and he's willing to just try anything that he thinks will work out for us. And so far, hearing about the Nacho method and your podcast and everybody's story has really changed my life and the way I parent in my relationship. Even with my kid, you know, I started to focus on him a lot more and tell my boyfriend, hey, today I'm going to pick him up and we're going to go get ice cream and I'll see you guys at home. You pick up the other kids. And he's okay with that. And it works out better for us too. You know, I get to spend some time with my son.
Yeah, exactly. And it's important that you have that alone time with your son.
Yes, it's extremely important. And especially him being, you know, him going from being the only child here and at his dad's, and then now he has a sibling over there, and he has 2 extra here. So I'm sure he appreciates me at least taking the time to do things with just him by himself.
Well, let me ask you this before we wrap up.
Sure.
Does your significant other parent your son?
I don't think he's ever felt the need to, because he does, I guess, in a way. But like I mentioned, I feel like because I always just took care of everything for him, the showers and all that stuff, getting his clothes ready. And because he's older, he's never really needed him to do anything. But of course, there's times where like he picks them up from his after school program for me, or, now, my son plays soccer and he coaches his team and, he gets along with him. But of course, I've noticed that sometimes when my boyfriend does try to tell him to do something, he doesn't feel so happy about it and he questions it. Kind of like, well, you're not the boss, my mom is. And I feel like my son sees that because I always have to parent the other kids. So he's like, well, my mom's doing everything. Why does he get to tell me something?
Right.
So there is conflict with that. And of course, I step in and that's what I tell, the best thing that I could probably do, and what I do tell my son is like, hey, at the end of the day, when your dad's not here, he's here and he helps me out. If I'm not around, you need to respect him because he's kind to you and he's patient with you and he listens to you. And vice versa. When you're with dad and I'm not there, your stepmom is able to help your dad with the things that I would usually be able to do for you. If dad can't do it for you, she can, or she might want to, or whatever the situation is. But my son and him have a really good relationship. And I feel like one of the things, before we do wrap it up, one of the biggest things that I do want to mention is that I feel that the reason why we came into this blend the way we did was because I came from a family where I didn't grow up with my dad. It was just a single mom of 7 kids. I'm the youngest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And he came from a family and it was him and his brother. He didn't know until he was a lot older, actually, maybe like 15, 14, that his dad that he grew up with wasn't his biological dad. And so he's always treated him like his own kid. And I think maybe he met him when he was like 4. So that's all he knows. So he didn't understand how I felt because to him, it's like, well, how could you not love my kids the way, you love your kid? Because I love that's like he's my own dad. But I had to explain to him, it's a totally different situation. That's all you had.
Right. And he thought that his stepdad was his dad.
Yeah, he's always thought that
since
he was since he was little. So as long as he knows that's his only dad. And I had to make sure that I explained that to him. Like, you need to understand that our situation is extremely unique. It's very different.
It is.
But all in all, they do have a great relationship, and I've always appreciated that.
Yes, and that's so good. And I'm so glad that not only you heard about us, but that your significant other was open to trying it and didn't take it as, oh, she doesn't love my kids, so we're done.
Yeah, and he's super open about everything and new things that I want to try, whether it's doing this whole nacho situation or anything else that I'm trying out. But he's extremely supportive. And when he has seen the benefits of nachoing, and he said, like, I am now rebuilding the relationship with the kids. And, now the little girl and I, will go to the store and the boys get to stay home and play video games and do their thing. And he sees that we're a lot happier now, that I don't have to do as much. And he appreciates everything that I've done a lot more now that he has to do it now.
Yes, exactly. Well, it has been great having you as a guest on our podcast. And I am so thankful that you decided to be a guest because I know what we've talked about is going to help so many other people.
Yes, I hope so too, because I wish I would have known somebody in my situation.
Well, I would love to have you back in a couple of years to see how things are going when the stepkids are a little bit older.
Absolutely. I would love that.
All right. That sounds great.
Thank you, Lori.
David, we rarely talk about us doing one-on-one coaching calls or couples coaching calls.
Yeah, that's true.
We do offer those.
Mm-hmm.
We get pretty busy sometimes.
Yep.
But I do want people to know that we do offer those.
Yeah. We were reminded how we are doing a disservice by not reminding people that they can get private help from us, because, you can get group help in the academy, but some people want, private, and they want it to be specific and focused on them and build a plan and address their issues and, make a bigger impact quicker. And so we are reminding you that that's there. And also it's very limited. So it's, we only have so much time that we can devote to that. So we can't take but a few couples at a time.
Right. So if you are interested in finding out more about our coaching packages, email us at Lori@nachokids.com or contact us at nachokids.com and just say, tell me about your coaching packages, girl.
Yeah, say exactly that.
Say it just like that. Draw out the letters, girl.
Yeah, that's with a U. GURRRRL.
That's it. What David said. Well, it was funny when I said contact us at Lori@nachokids.com. I'm like, I wonder if people even know how to spell Lori. Because my own grandmother spelled it 3 different ways.
Yeah. So it's just simple. LORI.
Yep. I'm simple. I'm a simple woman.
Well, the cool thing about the couples coaching is the fact that you've got both people in the relationship that are there. You got me and you both there, and we can really make a fast track into understanding what's going on, what each person is dealing with. And most often you'll find out that one person will say, our biggest issue is XYZ. And the other person is like, no, our biggest issue is A, B, and C. And I'm like, okay.
And then we find out it's E, F, and G.
Yeah. But, just the initial call is very enlightening for everybody. And by the time we get off that first call, everybody, especially the couple that comes to the call, they're like, wow, we thought we even understood what our own problems were, and we didn't. We were enlightened as to what things we need to work on. And so from there, we develop a plan for them and start, chipping away at the issues. But,
yeah, they join and have 10 problems. And by the time they get off the call, we tell them there's 15 more.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is that a lot of problems build on other problems. And so like anything else, we want to chip away at that, but eventually we got to get down to that root problem. Otherwise the rest of them will just come back.
And surprisingly, the root problem is not always the stepkids, folks.
It's rarely the stepkids.
That's right. Especially rarely. If it's my stepkid, my bio kid, David's stepkid.
Oh, whatever. But, understanding what the issues are and what the problems are, because a lot of people try to treat the symptoms and they think they're treating a problem and they're not. So that's frustrating. And the other thing too is you have some accountability happening. A lot of people talk about how, I talked to my spouse about something a dozen times, and then as soon as we went to a coach or a counselor, they said the same thing, and all of a sudden it clicked. But sometimes it just takes somebody else from outside of the relationship to point things out. And oftentimes it's not things you don't know. Like, people don't necessarily leave a counseling session with this aha moment.
I did.
Like, yeah. No, I don't say it doesn't happen, but a lot of times it's like, oh man, that makes so much sense. And I know that, but why did I not pay attention? It's a lot of that. And sometimes it's just putting all the pieces together. One of the benefits we have by coaching tons and tons and tons of people is that we see all this stuff all the time, and we kind of know where things will end up, or how people will respond sometimes, or what the end result's going to be. So it just gives us a lot more history to pull from to understand what may work and what may not work for you.
And the fun part is you get homework.
That is not the fun part.
It is for me. I get to assign the homework.
I'm sure you like that.
Yep. I need to get me a red pen to grade this homework.
Nah. The best part for me is when you see the couple making that progress that they didn't think they can make, or you see that hope they finally have. They come in feeling hopeless, and they're like, this is this is our last thing. If this doesn't work, we're done. And then, somewhere within the first couple of calls, you start seeing that hope that they have, and they can do this, and they've got the tools, and people have showed them how to use the tools, and they feel like there's people that's helping them navigate these tough things. That's the part I like. I just like seeing that renewed hope in people's eyes. Yeah.
Every time somebody signs up for the academy, or we sign somebody up with the coaching calls, I'm like, woohoo, somebody else we get to help.
I know. Yep.
That's what feeds my soul, people.
That's exactly it.
All right, David, quit flapping off at the jaws. These people got to go.
All right. I got to go too. So join us next week. Will we be here next week?
Yeah.
Okay. We said we were going to be in Texas, so I didn't know.
Well, I will have a podcast release that morning.
Oh, that's right. Because the magic of technology means that we can do it ahead of time.
That's right.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week. And remember, life is good
when you nacho.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Nacho Kids Podcast. Find us online at nachokids.com. Until next time, remember, life is good when you nacho.